Hello, everyone. I'm here with our eldership team from Life Church, Si, John, Dave, and we're involved in a bit of a listening exercise where we're really trying to hear from God together for the life of the church and for the future of the church. And you might remember a few weeks ago we sent out a questionnaire when we were asking people in the church some of the things that they've been feeling and experiencing during this time, some of the challenges, some of the hopes and dreams and aspirations as well. And so we also invited people to ask us any questions. If they got questions they wanted to ask us for us to think through and discuss, then we would do that. And so tonight is us really just addressing some of those questions. Now, there are a lot of questions. So what we did was many of them were on kind of similar themes. So we've narrowed it down really to kind of 4 areas to chat through and discuss. And each one of us as elders will be kind of hosting a question, if you like, or an area of discussion. So without further ado, I shall pass on to the wonderful Mr. John Lawn, and he's going to just tell us what the first kind of questions and comments were about. John, let me hand over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, one of the first things we noticed was that so many people actually, even before you asked questions, just said thank you so much to us as elders for leading in this time. And we felt so encouraged just by your support for us and prayer and just general kind of looking out for us. And this was followed up by people asking kind of, how are we doing? How are we getting on? How is lockdown affecting us? How are we finding life? So for us, well, it's obviously we're working from home. There's different work environments. We're missing meeting with people. We're missing being with people. We all love you guys and look forward to the day we can see you face to face again and chat with you that way. Life is different for us. We've got, as with many other people around the church, around the country, we've got family and children here with us who are working through this. Some of us are homeschooling and enjoying or not enjoying the challenges that go with that. If we're honest, we have ups and downs. There's parts of this that are hard and parts of this that are good and we enjoy. I'm going to pass around to the other guys just to share a quick snippet, maybe one thing that they're thankful for. So yeah, pass on to you. Let's go.
Oh, we're going to Dave. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, go on,
Dave. We're doing all right in the McNee household. Thank you for caring about us. But one thing that's been really encouraging has been the way in which we've grown our relationships with the people who live us along the street, and conversations over the garden fence and things like that, and chatting after the clap on Thursday night. So we're really thankful for the way that this has just opened up opportunities to talk to our neighbours a bit more and get to know the people who live around us.
Yeah, we had an awesome street party for the VE Day thing. Everyone was out. It was amazing. I had my full extrovert fix that I've been craving for so long. I think that's been one of the tough things, I think, personally, and probably for Jo, my wife, as well, has been how I've sort of found that, and I've sort of spoken into that a couple of times preaching. But what's been really amazing is off the back of those things, people who've been in touch with me to just check in how I'm doing. So there's a couple of people who phone me regularly just to sort of say, "You all right? How you doing?" Which is great. You know, just the level of care that the church is showing, not just to me, not just to us, but to each other is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing really well. We've got 3 generations on lockdown here in Thornbury Avenue, and hopefully a new baby on the way very soon. We're recording this on Monday, and Lydia, my daughter-in-law, was due on Sunday, so that could happen any time soon, and then the house will be filled with the pitter-patter of tiny feet.
This could be a short-lived Zoom.
No doubt Grandad will be up in the night changing nappies and things, which will be fun. But no, I've just been really, I guess I've just been really encouraged by people's care for us as a family as we've been in lockdown. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I should also just say that don't worry, I wasn't attacked. This is just the at-home lockdown haircut I had to have.
Yeah, I've got the same excuse, actually.
Si and I have different hairdressers.
Okay, just one of the whole areas that people asked us questions on and wanted to discuss was kind kind of the eschatological implications of what we're involved in here. Is this the end of the world? Should we all be walking around with banners saying the end of the world is nigh? Are these signs of the labour pains before the new heavens and the new earth come? And so it would be good, Dave, perhaps you could give us a bit of thinking on that and let people know what you think the implications of what we're involved in are, how we can think about this biblically.
Yeah, sure. It's not at all an unreasonable question to be asking. There's some really vivid language in the Bible, in books like Daniel and in Revelation, about descriptions of plagues and natural disasters. And so I think in times like this, there's an element of which it's natural to wonder whether are the things we're experiencing evidences of those things that the Bible was talking about the kind of times that we live in and the end of the world. And actually, this kind of makes its way into popular press occasionally as well. So there was an article in the Express about it earlier this week. There was something in the New York Times about it the week before that. Just to say a couple of really broad spectrum things. Two kind of periods of time that the New Testament talks about in particular that it's helpful to understand is the idea of the present age and the age to come. And that present age is sometimes called the present evil age. The coronavirus doesn't give us an indication about the timings of those. It doesn't tell us when the present age will be ending and when the age to come will be beginning. That's not a surprise. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24 that nobody knows the timing of these things. And so we shouldn't kind of be overly preoccupied with trying to work things out exactly. If Jesus said nobody knows, then Jesus is right when he says nobody knows. But we should, I think, be stirred into these things. The current situation certainly should make us aware of the brokenness and the pain that exists in the world in which we live, the lack of synergy, particularly between human beings and the world in which we live. And I think that then kind of strikes onto the idea of imminence and like how close to Jesus coming back are we. I think probably the helpful thing to think about there is what Jesus says in Luke 12, that we are always supposed to be ready for Jesus to come back. That readiness is a state of being we should always be in. We should always be living in anticipation of that day when Jesus comes back, because for everybody who's a follower of Jesus, that's going to be a really good day. And so we should be holding on to that hope constantly. But equally, because we know that day is coming, we should have a passion for people to believe and trust in Jesus before that day comes. And so if you find yourself thinking more about the day when Jesus comes back because of the circumstances that we're currently living in, I think that's a good thing as long as we apply it right. If we apply it right to saying, actually, I'm looking forward to that day and I'm more passionate about people hearing about Jesus right now because that day is coming, then that's exactly what an awareness of the end of the world should do for any Christian, I think.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Dave. Thank you. I mean, I think for me, it's I kind of flip between, wow, this is of some magnitude that's going on around us, and then, as you're saying, then I kind of anticipate a bit of heaven and think, wow, what if Jesus did come back? Wouldn't it be awesome, you know? So I think the important thing is we're not fearful. You know, for us to live is Christ, to die is gain. Our security isn't in this mortal frame anyway. It never has been. But getting that balance right is really helpful, Dave. Do either of you other guys want to chip in any thought or comment to those questions about the end?
I think it's really helpful. But I think one of the things that the people in our church asking that question has made me kind of think, actually, how many more people then are asking this question? Like, even if you don't have an awareness of the stuff in Revelation or in Daniel, it's a question that lots of people in society are asking, and therefore lots of our friends will be asking it as well, which is where stuff like the Alpha Course comes in. It's where stuff like Sunday mornings comes in, where we're going to be presenting people with the hope of the gospel, which is the whole point. You know, so those are the kind of the ways in which I guess we can show our readiness, is by thinking, okay, well, if I'm thinking like that, then other people are thinking like that too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. Anything from you, John? Are you happy for us to move on to the next bit?
I am. You've done a great job, guys.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, the next group of questions was an interesting group of questions because they were all asking questions about what we're currently doing and how much of that we will take into our future. So our prayer meetings have moved online. Some of our devotional content is online. Obviously, our Sunday meetings are online. We're using Zoom. We're using social media. We're using church online. All these various different things that we're using. And some people were asking, is that going to continue on even when we're allowed back into society again? And so, Si, you've been really massively involved, and your gifts have come to the fore, you and Sash and others, in putting together a lot of our Sunday content and things like that. So perhaps you could give us a few thoughts on what we've learned, where we're going, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been an interesting time, hasn't it? I think one of the things that I have sort of become, but I guess come to realize, is that some people have absolutely loved all the new stuff that is happening kind of in the church calendar, and then other people look at the church calendar and think, what on earth are you doing? This is a God-given time of rest, and I don't want to do any of those things. And I guess the beauty of that is that there is then therefore something for everyone, because no one has to do any of it. Just as it is in normal church life, and we are a church that we want to be there for everyone, and so because of that, I guess we're 100% convinced that meeting together is how authentic church should look. And in a time when we can't do that, this is, I guess, whilst not the best, it's the next best thing. But we're looking to that day when we can sing together again, however well, however badly. We can take communion together. We can have a coffee together again, however good, however bad, depending on which site you go to. We can have meals together. We can do all of those things, all those one anothering things that the Bible talks about. But the reality is that this isn't the time to be making major decisions about how the future of the church looks, but it is also partly why we're asking the questions that we asked in the email, just in that kind of this moment in time. What is God saying? What is God doing? Because all of those things help us to, I guess, just to kind of look forward and to think, okay, God, what are you doing? How does this stuff look? So Chris was mentioning before we even started recording this evening, just about how the printing press changed the face of the known kind of world, in a sense, during the Reformation, and how, who knows, whether Zoom could be the same, or social media, or whatever it is. Actually, none of these things are beyond God's reach. And so we're going to be, I guess, just considering how this time has helped us to engage people, to gather people. And I suppose some of the stuff that we've been doing is actually stuff that we were already considering pre-lockdown, pre-COVID. So you'll know that we've been recording our meetings via on video. So they were going out on YouTube before all of this started. So you can look back at some of the ones where we had no idea what we were doing, if you wanted to. But it's given us the option, I guess, to think about how we move forward with it in the future. So we will meet again in person. That's the good news. But the reality is, actually, the online option is bearing gospel fruit. It's never been an easier invite, I guess. And what's been a huge joy for me is seeing how many people have been taking the opportunity to go for it, to invite your friends, to invite your family along to stuff. We've had guests at church every single week. Now that happens actually most of the time in kind of real life as well. But it's been noticeable. I guess just maybe we can see it more in each other, which encourages us all more to do more of it. But like I say, we'll see where the fruit is. That's kind of the biblical way of looking at things, isn't it? You see where the fruit is, and you plow into those kind of areas. Not to mix farming metaphors too much, but like I say, we're looking forward to that day when we're together physically again. And I think, like I say, we're excited for what God's doing during this time. Not necessarily excited about the reason or the effects of this time, but nothing is beyond his reach, and his promise to us all is that he will turn all things together for the good of those who love him, and he is going to make his name famous. And so we're looking forward to that kind of, I guess, what this changes, which I guess links a little bit, Chris, to the bit you were going to take us through.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Si. I mean, do any of you other guys just want to chip anything in at all on that? What bits have you enjoyed? Why don't you say that? Which bits have you enjoyed or found difficult with the kind of online engagement? John, why don't you answer that one?
Silence as I look at Dave if he looks at me. I've enjoyed, even though they are particularly chaotic, the Zooms after church, just having that time to have face-to-face time with people, and also seeing the kind of kids interact with the adults as well. We often have our kids in there with putting Lego things across the screen and stuff and showing things they've been doing, and it's been a nice time to kind of interact across the age range and the breadth of the church.
Yeah,
I'd just like to say as well that the team here in the office and the volunteers have done tremendously well to adapt very quickly in this time, and to move us online and to be able to put such good quality stuff out. And it's a huge credit to those we have in Life Church. This has been reasonably smoothly done, and we've got most people involved. So well done, guys.
No, thanks, John.
I think I've appreciated it, and let's just be honest, I've appreciated some of the convenience of it. Sometimes it has been nicer not to have to get up really early on a Sunday morning, or having to spend lots of time packing stuff down or things like that. At the same time, I found it really hard as an extrovert, missing people, missing all of those social interactions, and feel like it's a kind of grayscale copy of the full colour version of hearing God's word, of worshipping together, and all of those things on a Sunday. So at the same time as saying I've enjoyed the convenience at times, I'm now in a position where I would say, do you know what? The cost of having to set my alarm again on a Sunday morning to go and help set up with church, or to be there for longer, or to wrestle the kids out of the house on time, is a cost I am so much more happy to pay now, having lived with the convenient alternative for a little while. I can't wait until we're able to meet back again together properly.
Yeah, it's a bit like moving into a new house and you have takeaways for the first little while. Or, like you get your kitchen sorted out and you can't cook, and it's like you get takeaways and it's great for the first few days. And then you think, I really need some proper food. You want to get back to the real thing, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think we all feel that lack, don't we? We feel that absence. Okay, I just want to just share a few thoughts based on some of the other questions that were raised, really to do with what do we feel God's saying about the church, the future? Are there any things that are new, different? What are the priorities that God is speaking to us about? And before I actually just share that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that people have probably got questions about as well, and have asked me personally about. One was about our plans for a fourth site. And now we're still pressing on with the mission that God has got in front of us. Obviously, timings for everything are completely out the window at the moment, so we don't know what that's going to look like. But it's still our desire to pursue that. So keep that in mind. Same with the building. We're praying that God will open up a significant building for us to use in the city after this is all over, that we can use for His glory. So we're still pressing on with all of those things. Another one that was perhaps a little more imminent was bringing James Hatcher into eldership. You'll remember we had that plan for the 7th of June. Guy Miller was due to be with us to preach at Life Church, and we were going to lay hands on James and appoint him as an elder alongside this team. Now, as we've chatted it through and discussed it, we've come to the conclusion that there's no way biblically we can appoint James as an elder, because it involves the laying on of hands, and Boris says no. And so it's a bit like if we try to do a baptism on Zoom. There are some things that we just can't do, and it just wouldn't ring in harmony with the gospel. We can pray together on Zoom, but we can't baptize somebody on Zoom, and I don't think we can lay hands on an elder and release them into eldership. And I think it would somehow miss the importance of the moment and the event, and what it means for James and Esther and for us as a team and as a church. So we're going to wait to appoint James into eldership until we are together again. Now, that doesn't mean that James isn't going to be fully involved with the life of the church. He'll still be continuing his current role, and will be working alongside us as elders, and he'll be probably involved from nowish in the majority of our elders' meetings and our decision making and our thinking. And so we want you to know, and we want you to receive his leadership still in the same way that you would do, and you have been, which we're amazingly thankful for. And we want you to continue to pray for him and Esther. This is obviously a time of challenge for them, the family as well. But as soon as possible, we're wanting to appoint James as an elder. So we'll do that. Good news is Guy Miller will still be with us in June, but it'll be kind of on your computer screen or your television or your phone rather than in person. So he'll be coming towards the end of our series on apostleship. So that's something to look forward to. But as far as the big things that we feel God has been saying and that I feel stirred about, ironically, we're in a time of isolation. And the thing that God keeps speaking mostly about is connection. And I've been so amazed at the three different types of connection that we've strengthened during this time, and that I think as God's people in this city we need to continue to strengthen. And the first connection is a connection upward. I don't know about you, but I think when we're thrust into a context like this, I think our dependence on God and our awareness of our humanity grows. And I found myself praying more, connecting more with him in a kind of devotional way, just expressing my frustration sometimes and my desire at others. And I don't know, just that sense of me being loved by him and needing him. I guess I've really needed God. And so that kind of upward connection is something that I think many people across the church are finding that they're really needing. If you're isolated and alone, to know that you've got the companionship of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit with you is vital. And if you're locked in with a big family, similarly, you need the patience and the fruit of the Spirit to be able to, to continue to press on. And so I just think God has been developing our intimacy with him and our connection with him. And corporately, I think we've been praying more and deeper and better and more regularly, and my desire would be to take that through into the new day, that we become a people who are much more known for their prayer and their dependence on God, perhaps our humility as well, acknowledging that we depend on him, and all of those kind of things. So I'm wanting us to exercise that privilege of prayer, I guess, a little more earnestly. So that's our upward connection. I think the other thing that I feel we've grown in, and this has come up this evening already, is our inward connection with one another. I've been so impressed with the maturity of the church and its leaders and the way they've cared for one another, loved one another, served one another. Every day I have phone calls, emails, messages, just expressing care and concern for other members of the church. And I think through things like our life support network, people have genuinely found care for one another and been praying for one another. And I think I see something of the authentic New Testament church in all of that. And so I've been thrilled by that. And that's something that I'd really love to carry on into whatever post-lockdown looks like, is our genuineness, our authenticity. I don't know what you want to call it, but the reality of our love for one another, our service for one another, our compassion for one another, our prayer for one another. I mean, just seeing people pray for each other, giving gifts to one another, being concerned about one another's welfare, those kind of things. So that kind of inward connection, I'd love the church to continue to grow in one another. And then the other connection was our connection outwards, and I guess that's twofold. Firstly, our kind of immediate context of Southampton and the streets we live in. I mean, Dave, you mentioned this side, John, you've all mentioned this, that we've found a greater degree of connection with our immediate neighbours in our streets, our friends on our Facebook and other social media and things like that. And we found this ease of connection. I mean, every day on our street WhatsApp group, there's jokes, there's banter, there's photographs, there's, needs and concerns. I mean, my Joe's been sharing the blessing video on our street WhatsApp, and they're all saying, thank you, that's so uplifting. And I can't imagine us doing that kind of thing before. We wouldn't have had the arena to do it. And so I think this has been happening right away across the church and the churches. And so I'm kind of eager for us to harness that desire, the thing that's motivating us to do that. Because, it's no more difficult for us to actually physically speak to people. We just make it so sometimes. And so I think that outward connection, connecting with people around us, I'd love to see that grow in the future. And I think just taking things a little broader and a little bigger, I think I can say with certainty in our lifetimes, there has never been a genuinely global situation. I mean, you could hark back to the financial crisis of 2008 and say, well, that affected the whole world. Well, it did, but only really in the economy, and it didn't overflow into many nations that are, and other things are kind of geographically limited. There are earthquakes and floods and things like that. I remember the earthquake in 2015 in Nepal, and that has a huge devastation for one nation, but very little effect in others. But we're in a context where there is a truly global shaking going on. And if there's a global shaking, it requires a global solution. And we, the church, are the ones that have the global solution. We have Jesus and his gospel of the kingdom. And so my hope is that out of this, it's a wake-up call for the nations of the world to come back to a place of humility, acknowledging that we're creatures and he's the creator, not thinking we've got everything sorted and solved. And I think many nations have been quite humbled by this. And that means the individuals in those nations are humbled too. My prayer is that out of this, church planting, gospel advance, apostolic mission to the ends of the earth, call it what you will, but a global solution for a global pandemic. And we're the ones that have got it. So for me, the thing that excites me most is the potential for what Jesus could do in these next few years through his church around the world. And so I think they're the themes that I'm kind of resonating with, really. A connection upwards, our own personal and corporate connection through prayer, dependence on Jesus, our connections inwards to the church, one another, and loads more, and our connection outwards to our neighbours and also to the nations. So they're the kind of things that I'm really feeling like we need to take into and use to help shape the new normal. And hopefully there'll be things that you will resonate with as well. I mean, before we wrap up, we're going to wrap up now, but has anybody got any final comments? Si, anything you want to add?
And the only other question that came in was didn't fit into those categories was who would win in an arm wrestling competition. And I can safely say I'd probably be last. But I think it'd be quite a battle between Chris and Dave.
Shall we have
sorry, John.
We have socially distanced arm wrestling.
I'll challenge you for last.
That's over our first pint when we're out of lockdown. We shall find the answer to that question, Si.
We'll post the results. Yeah.
Good. Dave, anything you wanted to add to finish off with?
Just to say, we're really thankful for so many of you who've contributed in so many ways. You've heard a few people get name dropped in the last few minutes about the things they've done, but really it would take us way too long to list everything that so many people have done to make our jobs as leaders and elders much easier than they might have been. And so we're just really thankful for so many of you, and please keep going. And I guess as well, the other thing I'd say is, like, for people who are finding this particularly hard and particularly difficult for whatever reasons, for financial reasons, for social reasons, the list could go on, couldn't they? Hold on, keep going, and please let the church help. If you want to get in touch with us and there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to. If we have a life support fund for people who are struggling financially, please don't let shame or pride be a reason why you wouldn't avail yourself of that if you are in financial difficulty. We want to come out of this together, and we want to come out of this healthy and stronger as a family of believers together. So let's help one another, keep helping one another, and let others help you if you really need it.
Thanks, Dave. That's brilliant. John, anything from you?
Only just to continue what Chris was saying about the kind of change in the world. It's just struck me that we hear our world leaders talking about compassion and kindness and things that maybe have been underrated for such a long time. And I think those are things that are going to come to the fore as we look around the world and see who is suffering, who is struggling, and for kind of God to be putting a heart in us to reach and to serve the poor and those who are really just hit and impacted by this in a larger way. That compassion and kindness are things that we should be leading in, but it's great to hear the Prime Minister talk about that as well. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Well, as is normal in these situations, the oldest one gets the last word. And, I just wanted to say to the church how impressed I am with you guys as leaders. Some of you have been elders a short time, some a longer time. And this is a situation none of us could ever have anticipated. But I genuinely can't imagine leading the church through a time like this with a nicer, more humble, more hardworking, more joy-filled and group of guys. And I'm so thankful to God for each one of you. And so I want to just commend these guys to the church and say you've got a great team of elders here, and God has got a great future ahead for us in lockdown and out of lockdown. And I thank you, church, for watching, taking the time to bear with us through to the end and to hear the answers to some of these questions. I trust it's been helpful for you, and do feel free to come back to us if you have other thoughts and other questions that you want to ask. This isn't the end of the process. We're still listening to God. We're still trying to hear from God through the local church, and your opinion is still valued by us. So we're going to wrap up there and say thank you very much. So we'll give you a big wave and we'll sign off. God bless. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.